Good day, campers, or should I say, fellow nerds. Welcome back to another episode of Two Maesters, part of the Pick Up the Mic Network. And today, we're talking about the most wonderful, special, amazing thing that's ever happened in the world of fantasy. That's right, it's Dungeons and Dragons! Woo! Oh yeah! Woo! And we have a very, very, very special guest here today. But before we do that, Josh, how you doing today?
I'm really good, thanks. And I'm really anticipating like Baldur's Gate 3.
Oh,
it's coming out on the 3rd. I've been able to play early access, and that got me into like the whole Dungeons and Dragons world. And that's coming out soon, so I'm just really hyped about that.
Yeah, perfect time to be talking about Dungeons and Dragons as well. And of course, our very special guest. If you'd like to introduce yourself, my lord.
Oh, hi, my name is Brendan. I've been a Dungeon Master since I was 10 years old, which therefore gives me 15 years of experience, so I should really be the CEO of Dungeon Mastering by now, you know.
He's had no life for 15 years, holy cow.
Yeah, I've tried to get Morgan to play Dungeons & Dragons, but, you know, it's just too cool and too busy.
I know. I'm sorry I've got a life, man. I mean, I play Warhammer, so I don't have a life. It's just because I already don't have a life, I therefore have nothing to give. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like in the World of Warcraft episode of South Park. How do you kill that which has no life? The sword of 1,000 troops. So we've got to start off, what's everyone's experience of D&D? Well, to be honest, I put that question down, but I realized we just both answered it. So, you two answered it. So what's my experience of D&D? Oh, cute. Good. I'm glad that you asked. So nothing. Like, I've played Dungeons and Dragons with Brendan as a dungeon master, but that was like a trimmed down version, did you say, or something?
Yeah, it was quite a simplified version. You just turned up for one session. It was like just a little one shot to see if you like role playing, and you never came back. So I guess you hate D&D.
Well, I mean, I just walk through the door. Brendan gives me like a sharp look and goes,
"Sit your ass down."
And I just was put off by it. But I've got to admit, in all honesty, I came back, maybe 2-3 times? I really enjoyed it. First D&D experience, I loved it, but I guess it was a very simplified version because it's usually quite complicated. But before we get into that, let's just give a complete, very general overview of what Dungeons and Dragons is. So this is copied from Wikipedia. I'm quite proud of copying it from Wikipedia because let's be honest, when you look something up, first thing you do is you Google it, and usually Wikipedia comes up. So
yeah,
this is what the people think. So Dungeons and Dragons, commonly abbreviated to D&D or DND, wow, clever, is a fantasy tabletop role-playing game, RPG, originally designed by Gary Gygax. Oh, I'm going to get corrected.
That's why you're the expert.
Yeah, there you go.
This is why we got Brendan here, folks. This is why we got Brendan. And Dave Arneson.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, very good.
Thank you. The game was first published in 1974 by Tactical Studies Rules Incorporated. It's been published by Wizards of the Coast, which is now a subsidiary of Hasbro since 1997. Is generally recognized as the Kickstarter of the role-playing game industry. Do you agree with that statement, that it's generally the Kickstarter of the role-playing game industry? Do you think there's something that came before?
No, I would have to agree with them. And I think if you go back to stuff like the CD Projekt Red with The Witcher, they said that they played Dungeons and Dragons. You've got like Dragon Age, which is another like video game RPG. A lot of that is based on Dungeons and Dragons as well. And I think like so many different like role-playing fantasy games, you can see like elements of Dungeons and Dragons within them. And then you realize that the devs actually played the games growing up and then turned them into video games. And even, like Cyberpunk, the original game I think was Cyberpunk 2020. And that the actual creator of that role-playing RPG really enjoyed like Dungeons and Dragons and wanted to make a modern version of it, or really a futuristic version. So it just goes to show, like, the biggest RPGs, even Skyrim as well, if you think about it, the biggest RPGs are based off, like, the Dungeons and Dragons universe or are set in the Dungeons and Dragons universe.
Yeah, I guess you could say, you know, Dungeons and Dragons is the inspiration for a lot of these adventure fantasies that we have today. You could even, well, this is controversial, we could even argue Lord of the Rings inspired Dungeons and Dragons. Dungeons and Dragons kind of put it to the popular masses, but we're going to get to that.
Let's not beat around the bush.
Is it getting hot in here? Oh, God, I feel like someone's going to kick my ass. But yeah, I would argue that. And here's a bit of trivia. I love looking up, you know, famous people who are into these sort of nerddom. So did you know Robin Williams was into it? Vin Diesel from Fast and Furious. Isn't that great? Everyone's idol, Vin Diesel. Amazing. But I'm sure there's lots of other people who don't know. I just couldn't Google them all. But there's a lot of inspiration that comes to the fantasy and I guess in some cases the science fiction world from Dungeons and Dragons. So, for example, Warhammer now has their own role-playing tabletop game as well, very similar to Dungeons and Dragons, which obviously got its
but legally distinct.
Yeah,
very important,
legally
you know?
distinct. Before we get sued, because I ain't got no dollar for that. So, how does the game work? So basically, I'm sure Brendan's going to correct me on this. Each player meticulously creates their own character. These characters embark on adventures with a fantasy setting. A dungeon master, i.e. Brendan, serves as the game's referee and storyteller while maintaining the setting in which the adventures occur and playing the role of the inhabitants of the game world, also referred to as non-playable characters. I love insulting people by saying they're like non-playable characters.
Yeah, it's such an, you know, it's got big NPC energy.
Yeah.
Like
side character, not even side character, just NPC, like just background character. Yeah, so deep. So characters interact with NPCs and each other on an adventure or a quest. These can involve anything from finding treasure to defeating an enemy to rescuing a fair maiden even. Players decide on what they want their characters to do in a given situation. The results of the party's choices and the overall storyline for the game are determined by the Dungeon Master according to the rules of the game and the Dungeon Master's interpretation of those rules. The Dungeon Master selects and describes the various non-player characters that the party encounters, the settings in which these interactions occur, and the outcomes of those encounters based on the player's choices and actions. In the process, characters earn experience points to level up their characters over a series of sessions, and they get more and more powerful and can basically develop their attributes like charisma, strength, etc. Do we all agree was that okay?
it feels like the very technical description. You know?
Yeah, I've sucked all the fun out of it. That's what I do. That's what I do.
But essentially, yes, that is D&D in a nutshell. If you had to describe it in a very like formal way, it's a collaborative storytelling game.
Yeah.
Right. The idea is we all sit down together and we're gonna basically, as grown men, play make believe. So grown men and women.
Yeah.
But we're just all going to sit down and play make-believe together, and we're going to have a great time.
And that's the fun of it, really. People's imaginations can really run wild. Like, what was the storyline you made for when you were dungeon mastering for me?
Yeah, so the campaign we were playing in was you guys all came from a mainland, which we didn't even bother describing, and you all arrived on a ship. Yeah, it was very... It takes a lot of effort to write a D&D campaign.
Yeah.
And you all crash landed on this system of islands. And on the islands were many quests that you had to do to complete. There's a whole story that everyone's meant to go through. But like every D&D campaign, which is the real issue, after about 10 sessions, getting people to meet up becomes impossible because life takes over. But we just had a really good time killing monsters, finding treasure, saving damsels in distress.
And some of the weapons and stuff you could pick up along the way, like we literally had, was it the nipple tassels of hypnotism? What was it?
It was like it was like blinding nipple tassels or something like that. They would entrance you. So if you took your shirt off and did your nipple tassels,
and then that's when you swoop in for the kill.
Finish him.
It was amazing. Some great weapons and tools you could pick up. And I think that's kind of the fun of it, finding these weapons made by the Dungeon Master. And you can make it funny. You can make it more serious. Hell, you could even do it virtually if you wanted to. I know plenty of people who did it over lockdown, such as like my cousin. Have you participated in any Dungeons and Dragons games?
No, and I think the thing that really like first got me into Dungeons and Dragons was the like Neverwinter Online. And then when I started playing that, I then saw like Baldur's Gate, the original game that was done by BioWare, which was the game that really put them on the map for BioWare. And then they took what they learned from there to then build up like Dragon Age Inquisition. And then my friend was like, they made a 2. So then I played like Baldur's Gate 2. And it's a really old game, but I think the storyline is really good. So then when I realized that, there's an early access and there's a third game, that's what really got me into it. And I think that, I would love to like go and to do some tabletop like RPG elements, and then also just having like a role-playing game with a group of friends. That'd be great. And I think you can kind of see like the storytelling element in like Baldur's Gate, especially like in early access. You have a narrator who basically tells the story. And I think it's really nice because it's like, you walk down this path and you see this, and then you like play it out. And I think it kind of brings that element, and the fact that they've also allowed like online, so you can actually play Baldur's Gate like a tabletop RPG with friends. We've just given like the narrative part to like the creators of the game.
Right. So there's no dungeon master as such. You're okay, but and in terms of like character creation, how far can you go with these video games?
Quite a lot. So you can play Dragonborn, which is basically I've
Dragonborn.
Yeah. So it's basically
that's a bloody rip-off.
Like, and I think also, Brendan, you probably agree. Like the lore is so much in it. It's ridiculous.
So, sometimes it's too much.
It is. It is. Like even like just talking about like Dragonborn, they're a race that were made by dragons, so they could be their servants, and then they just rose up in revolt.
One go, Fus Rodar!
And then we're kind of like, you know what, we've had enough of this. We're gonna then be our own people. Then in the game, you can play as like a half orc as well. You can play as like a halfling, which is very close to. I think hobbits are
legally
halflings,
distinct.
Yeah, but legally distinct.
For legal reasons,
the
for legal reasons, we must state that.
And I think one of the things that I did like is that the fact they've got like the drow, which are the dark elves, which are full on like everyone thinks they're full on evil. So anytime someone sees a drow, especially like in the game, in the early access of Baldur's Gate 3, it's like, oh my days, who is this person? What are you doing here? You're up to mischief. And then you've also got like the Dwergar, which are like the dark dwarves as well.
Oh,
and
nice.
You can also like play as a gnome. And I think it's the only place. Did Dungeons and Dragons come up with tieflings?
They're just their version of like half demons.
Yeah.
Was a tiefling what we saw, the fairy looking?
The druid in the film,
druid, the head druid. Yes, yeah.
But then you said they're half demon.
Well, they've got fiendish blood in them, so like their parents or ancestors made like a fiendish pact, and then their descendants still have demony bits, so they're normally warlocks or something like that. But like, if you want to play like an edgelord character, you want to play like a half demon samurai, they let you do that.
Oh yeah.
And like even in the game, one of the actual classes they bring in is the monk class.
Yeah.
And the way that they've done it is like Shaolin monk style. And it's amazing because when you see it like in the trailer, so you could basically, as you said, Brendan, be like a half demon tiefling warrior monk who has magic and use elemental powers. And I'm like, what game can you literally do that in? And it just goes to show like how much variety there is in Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, and I think that's the fun of it because it's creative, isn't it? When you're making your character, especially, I haven't played the video games, but playing what I did with Brendan, making our characters was so fun. Like the names you come up with them, and like awarding points to what were the different what do you call them, attributes?
Yeah, so the D&D system has changed a lot. I think we're on 5th edition, right? Which is actually like 6th or 7th if you count all the little sub.
Oh yeah, I've got some info about that.
Yeah. Well, D&D's changed a lot. I'm sure we'll get into that. But yeah, when you make a character, D&D is great in that you just get loads and loads of choice. And here's the thing, if we're playing a tabletop game, if you're playing a computer game, you're limited by the options they give you. If I'm your dungeon master and you go like, hey, I kind of play like this weird space alien that's on this fantasy world, who uses technology but pretends it's magic. It's like, cool, we can definitely do that. We'll figure out a way.
Okay, yeah.
And then that's your character.
That sounds like Thor from Marvel, to be honest. But yeah, go on.
Yeah, exactly. And you make
Superman.
your character, and that is your character. And what's really special about it is that you're going to spend a lot of time with this person. Like a Dungeons & Dragons campaign, I mean, there's one that's been going for like 20 years, but I've played ones that have lasted for 2 years.
Wow.
So you're playing the same character every week for 2 years. You really get a connection with them. You really build up their backstory. They've gone on all these great adventures.
Describe your character to me.
Oh, one of my characters.
Which the one you've been playing with for 2 years?
So the one I was playing with for a couple of years was a oh goodness, they were a wizard. They were a wizard, right? Okay, because I love being a wizard.
A red wizard of Fae.
Yeah, well, they were sort of a red wizard of
see, I
Fae
know
and
some
sort
stuff.
of not, right? Yeah, that was the thing. So I was a lawful evil member in a party of good people, but our goals were aligned. So there's a bit of tension between me and the party. And eventually, I went through this whole character arc of I was basically an evil wizard who's there to make money for their dark gods. And
Like
then
Jeff
turned around
Bezos.
after a year, was like, why am I doing this? Threw off the red robe, became a normal wizard, did all this kind of stuff.
Character arc, very
Yeah,
nice.
beautiful
The
character.
redemption
arcs.
arc, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
But then
becomes
does
a
he
good
swing
character.
back at the end? It's like
just at the end when they're about to
Yeah.
get the treasure and the major prize. Yeah, I'm going back to my
Yeah.
old ways.
Yeah,
Roll
sorry
song.
about that, guys. It was a big double bluff. Get your old red robes back out of the closet, pop those on.
exactly, go full circle. That's why I say, why bother doing a U-turn? You can just go full circle. That sounds cool though, because I love the character creation. The way you basically grow and get more XP each time you play. So you start off determining your character's ability scores, which consist of strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma.
Oh, I love charisma. Can we just talk about charisma for a second?
go on.
Because all the other stats, everyone loves them. They're like strength. Yes, how strong my warrior is. I want a lot of strength. Yeah. Dexterity. Let's be sneaky like a rogue. Yeah. Constitution. How tough I am. Brilliant. How wise I am to be a cleric. How intelligent so I can be a wizard who knows a lot of spells. And everyone goes, and charisma. How pretty I am. Fantastic. I'm really glad that's a stat that I can pick. So everyone, is like, that's going to be my dump stat. I'll be an ugly barbarian. It's fine,
Well, exactly. All those battles don't make you pretty, that's for sure.
Exactly. But it's actually meant to represent, like your force of personality, right? That's
Right.
what charisma is. So you could be ugly, but if you're a really charming guy, you're a really charming guy. So you'll get through and you'll talk to people easier,
Thanks. That gives me hope in real life. Though. I know you're talking about me, though. You don't have to say it. And I remember we were watching, and we've got to bring this up, watching the movie. Me and Brendan sat down and watched the movie for the first time, Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves.
Yeah, the new one, not the old one.
Oh yeah, not the old one.
Yeah.
just-
Yeah.
I don't know. Have you guys ever sat through the old one?
I've watched bits of it, yeah.
Oh, it's a special film.
Yeah. Let's not talk about that. Let's move swiftly on. But yeah, the main character now, he was the lute player. Or flute player, whatever you call it.
Lute,
Yeah, that's it.
yeah.
And essentially, he didn't have much strength, didn't have much dexterity, not much constitution. I guess he had intelligence, wisdom, and charisma.
He had intelligence and charisma, no wisdom. It's not a wise character.
Yeah.
But he had the smarts and he had the mouth to talk about.
Because if he was wise, I don't think he would have thought of a better plan.
Plan B, plan C, plan D. And he's like, that plan's got some stink to it now. The dialogue in that movie. Oh,
I knew
my
this plan
goodness.
would fail, so therefore I came up with plan C.
Yeah. The dialogue in that movie was so good, honestly.
Oh.
Although, we touched on it briefly, there are variations of this game. So there's basic D&D, and then there's advanced D&D. Advanced D&D, the second edition, came out in 1989. The third edition was the year 2000, which is fairly recent. Fourth edition, 2008. And fifth edition, 2014. And I know, obviously, very few of us were playing in 1989, but do you know much about how it's changed over time?
I played AD&D. I played Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. Little 8-year-old Brendan was playing with his dad.
Oh,
With his old AD&D books, and I was playing a hobbit because hobbits were small, but
Halflings.
playing a halfling, they were small but powerful. An
Definitely
8-year-old
gonna get
Brendan
sued.
really connected with that. They're different games, but the core premise is still the same.
right.
Yeah, and I love D&D because the game systems with Dungeons and Dragons, they're not balanced. They're deeply flawed. But the magic of D&D is that doesn't matter, and we'll get into that later about why that is. But
But I mean, you can get into it now.
Yeah.
We've got plenty of time.
Yeah, exactly. We've got plenty of time. So, Dungeons & Dragons, the evolution...
Moving swiftly on. I'm kidding. Go on, you were saying.
Well, so let's think about how Dungeons & Dragons got created, right? So it was a new board game that Gary Gygax comes up with. So let's take a look at some other board games that came about. I've got like 2 examples. So 2 really good ones would be like chess and Risk, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, 2 different games, but essentially they're war games, right?
Yeah.
Both are really, really well designed and really badly designed at the same time, just like Dungeons & Dragons, okay? So let's take chess, for example. If me and you play chess, and I've spent 10 years playing chess, and you spent 5 minutes, I'm going to beat you every single game of chess.
Yeah.
Which just isn't that much fun for a beginner learning chess.
Noobs. Bloody noobs.
Exactly right. But if we take Risk, I mean, Risk is a game that's really all about luck, right? We roll the dice, and I could be a 5-year-old with no idea what I'm doing, but if I get lucky, doesn't matter how experienced you are at Risk, I could beat you at Risk every single time.
Finish him!
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So these were the old style of war games that were happening, right? There were lots of these battle simulators. They're doing large wars. And then Gary Gygax is like, well, what about change it up a little bit? You know, these are all games about one person on another person, and there's a winner, right?
Yeah.
2 people enter, 1 person leaves. Fantastic. So original D&D kind of flipped that on its head by saying like, well, what if instead of having winners and losers, we just all have fun together? This is a very weird concept, right? Okay, playing a board game, like.
No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, exactly. Like when you're playing a board game normally, you'll sit there, 1 person wins, and 5 people are crying in the corner. Like, ask any Christmas game of Monopoly.
Yeah. Oh, those days. Oh, those games. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Especially if you get kicked out early. Like, I don't know if you guys have played Catan. Have you played Catan?
Yeah, I've played a lot of Catan, yeah.
Love that game, but I just, if I get the robber cards, or like roll the robber die, I'm just such an a-hole to play with, honestly. But it can be, a lot of tears can be broken over this. I mean, with D&D, do you think a lot of tears can be shed over it as well?
Oh, a lot of tears can be shed over D&D.
All right, trauma. Holy cow.
Oh, are you kidding me? Whoa. Yeah, no. You can have unfair dungeon masters, people's characters die that they spent 3 years playing with.
Wow.
There are fat tears sometimes. Grown men crying over their imaginary characters. It was their time, you know?
I know, and I guess also some issues can be people not taking the game seriously or just longing stuff out. Like, I remember when I was playing, I kept getting hurt. I just constantly want to do silly stuff all the time. Like, you come across a hole that's got a glow coming out of it. You and your party look around, and who wants to do something first? What's the first move? And I go, I want to piss on it.
Yeah. Which is actually way more common than you think with every D&D group, right?
Oh, I thought I was special.
I'm sorry, Morgan, but I've met a few Morgans in my time.
It's okay. It's okay.
But you were having fun doing that in the game, you know? You really liked having the agency.
I rolled successfully every time, and I just pissed on something. It was impressive.
I'm not going to lie, you were always going to succeed.
Yeah.
Like, I don't consider it a great feat of skill to urinate on something. I just assume you passed.
It's true. Easiest skill to have, really, isn't it? Yeah. That's it, really, because there can also be people who give too much backstory to their characters that can long stuff out. You can also have people just not show up to games as well, and that really stalls everything.
Well, yeah, this is all true, but what's really important to remember is that lots of different people enjoy D&D for different reasons. One of the reasons it's such an amazing game is that lots of people enjoy it for many different reasons, right? Mm-hmm. So let's go back to character creation. I love creating characters. I don't know about you. Like, if I log on to Skyrim, I'll spend 5 hours, making sure my character is perfect. Like, I've got my eyes just right, all of this. I've picked out all my skills. I've, optimized my character. I find lots of great joy to that and, making a backstory and all that stuff. That's great. That's a really good way to enjoy D&D. Some people literally just make characters, and that's all they do. And they love it. Never play with them. Just make characters. Great. Okay. You're enjoying D&D in your own way. There's no wrong way to play this game. It's not like you've got the D&D police over you being like, excuse me, this is a serious role-playing battle simulator, right? Okay.
Well, I'm sure if you go to certain events, I guess, serious ones, you would need to have a certain level of, seriousness to you as opposed to...
What is serious D&D, right?
Well, for example, if you hire... So you can actually be a professional dungeon master. One of my former neighbors, Like, I couldn't believe it. He actually does it for a living, really. Like, proper. You could argue it's just like a sort of a games facilitator, but like role-playing ones. I went to a medieval-themed party that he hosted, but when I say hosted, it literally, like, they had special games you could do. There were special, like, people who were kind of playing in characters. Someone was dressed up as a king and, like, was really into it. And, yeah, I think if you hire, like, a proper dungeon master, if someone shows up and says, I want to make Dildobot 9000 as my character, you'd probably be like, get out.
Well, yeah, but here's the thing, like, as a dungeon master for hire, if you're playing with a load of people who want to play Dildo Master 9000, like, that's what you've been. That's the game you've been hired to play, right? Like,
true.
That's what you're gonna do, and it's all about tailoring it for your players.
Yeah,
and like, and the same with everything. Like, you could go to a pub, right? Like let's consider pubs you go to, right? Some of them, if you turn up in a bright pink dress, right, okay, with 2 police sirens making loads of noise, they'll love you down that pub. If you do the same thing at a fine dining restaurant,
out the door,
right? But both those places are drinking wine, but like it's just finding the right group for you.
That's true. Yeah. That's true. The right context for the right things. Okay, fair enough. Well, as we're still talking about character creation, here's a question for you. When it comes to RPGs or Dungeons and Dragons specifically, what sort of character do you prefer to go for?
Myself, I always start with like a warrior first.
Yeah.
Just to see like what is it like to play as that. Then I always go as then play someone who's like either a mage or someone who's a wizard or a warlock. But then I think I just don't pick like a rogue to play. Cause like
it's dishonorable.
Cause like I always like go towards like strength-based characters first, whether it's like Skyrim or whether it's like in Dragon Age or Dungeons and Dragons. I always do that first, cause like whether it's like a paladin or a knight type figure, and then
it just feels simpler to play first. You're like, if I just do the normal combat first, I will get this game, right? Like if I try and go in the deep end, I'll get confused. It'll be too much, right?
And then I get onto the magical characters. And then I'm stuck there, and I'm like, well, they've got magic. Do I want to sneak around, or do I want to use magic? Do I want to produce lightning or have like fire bolts or freeze people, or do I want to go back to like the stealth? And I'm like, no, I'll stay with the magic. Yeah. So I always I need to understand the game first with like a warrior type person, as you said, simple like hack and slash, basically playing through the game, and then I've understood the game. Then I play as like a character who has magic.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you, except I just always only ever play as the warrior class because I just love getting up close. And like, I feel like if you're just standing back going pew, pew, with like magic or a sort of a bow and arrow, I just feel like I'm missing out some of the dynamics of it, especially think of like RPGs where you just click rather than you actually like have certain combos and stuff you do. You just push buttons and stuff. What about you, Brendan? What's your sort of RPG-esque character you always go for? Which type?
I play wizards. I do the exact same thing. I'll normally do like an hour as like the combat person, be like, okay, cool, I got the basic controls. Then I'll delete it immediately and go and make a wizard, just love spellcasting, always have,
Just one quick question, like, what is the difference between a wizard, a cleric, a warlock, and a sorcerer? Like I kind of understand what a warlock is, like, because I know a cleric is based on like the religion they signed up to.
Yeah.
But what is the difference? The main difference between like a sorcerer and a wizard?
Okay, well, it depends what edition of D&D we're talking about, right? Okay, so we're going to talk about like D&D in classes. Like in the first edition of D&D, you chose either a race or a class.
Okay.
So you were either a human or on like a human warrior or a human wizard or a human rogue, or you got to be an elf. And that was your choice, right?
Okay.
And then they decided, like, the third edition, like, why are we doing this? Like, this is ridiculous. So then you pick your race and your class. And the classes remain pretty much consistent. They change up so you get the core classes in your core book, and these are all core classes. So you've got 2 different kinds of spellcasters in D&D. You've got your arcane ones, which is like swords and sorcery, like fireballs, lightning bolts, all that cool stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And then you have divine casters, who are from the gods healing. So druids and clerics are your divine casters. And they get access to healing magic. Mm-hmm. And a lot of their spells are about protective wards or making your ally stronger with like bull's strength, Which means so lame. You need it. You need them. Trust me.
Yeah, but you don't do anything offensive. You just sit there like healing people. You know. Like,
listen, every party needs the cleric, and you know when you're playing and you're being the cleric. Like, yeah, I'm doing my duty for the party here. I'll sit at the back and heal. It's okay.
The religious man as well.
Yeah, so you got your clerics, which are your divine casters. And then you've got your arcane casters, which are your sorcerers, your wizards, and sort of your warlocks. So your wizards are book learning. So they cast off their intellect. So the 6 stats we said earlier, strength, blah, 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 intellect. So the smarter you are as a wizard, the more spells that you'll know. As a wizard, you know lots and lots and lots of spells, but you can only cast a few of them. So you've got the huge breadth of knowledge, but not that much raw power in a fight, right? And then you have... Back in the old version of D&D, you also had to prepare your spells at the start of the day. So you had to choose. You got like 7 or 8 at level 3, and you were like, well, I get these spells that I cast during the day. I know like 30 spells, but I've got Featherfall and this one just in case. Then your sorcerer, he didn't learn, right? He's like your bad boy of magic, yeah? He's got blood descended from like dragons or some other cool thing. And he casts off charisma. He is so sexy that he's allowed to use magic, right?
Sorcerers are sexy, aren't they? We can say that again.
But yeah, no, his force of personality is what lets him cast. And so while the wizard knows lots of spells, but can cast very few of them, the sorcerer knows like 5 spells, but it's like, yeah, but I can do it like 20 times a day. It's all good. So he'll blast fireballs all day long.
So they're like the sort of the arrogant... what do you call it when someone's just got all of this?
Arrogant, raw talent. Well, the wizard is the one who's in the classroom studying, studious all the time.
The nerds.
And then both of them pass the exam, but the wizard's the one who spent all night and all week preparing, while the sorcerer just arrives, does the test, and passes.
So I like playing sorcerers a lot. It was good. It was good for you to just be like, I'll just throw more things in it.
It's not fair. Life's too easy. And I can see here, so warlocks are distinguished from wizards as creating forbidden pacts, usually with powerful creatures or demons or spirits to harness their innate magic. Now, I'm just reading this off Google. That might not necessarily apply to D&D. Brendan, does that apply?
No, that is from D&D. So warlocks, they took inspiration from, the term for warlock, which is male witch. And they're like, cool, right, so they form a pact with the devil. And what makes them different is that the sorcerer knows, like, a few spells but can cast lots. Well, the warlock's like, well, I can cast them as many times as I like, but I know 2. Brilliant. Or 3.
Well,
I think like
stick to what you know. That's what I say. Like,
I think when you were the strongest level of warlock back in 3rd edition, you could know 12 spells, and that was like that's your limit. You can do as many times as you like. So it really is. It's like the real harsh end of that scale, and they're really focused on damage, like a real glass cannon kind of character.
So the OCD of the wizarding world.
Yeah.
So wait, if a warlock's a male version of a witch, a sorceress is a female version of a sorcerer. What's the female version of a wizard then? I thought that'd be a witch.
I think it's just a wizard, mate.
Why is wizard like universal? But then
I think wizard is both genders. It's
then why is it Hogwarts School of Wizardry and witchcraft and whatever?
I don't know. Maybe we should get J.K. Rowling on. I'm sure we'll have a great time.
We had her on for the Harry Potter episode.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Talking to your audience, if you want to see us with J.K. Rowling, have a look at it. Nah, I'm just kidding. We don't want to get sued. She wasn't on there.
But then, like a mage, then like that's the thing.
Yeah.
Like, so
what the hell's a mage?
Is a mage just someone who has magical abilities?
I think a mage is just a general magic user, like a magi or like. But like these are D&D specific terms for these. But of course, over fantasy, like there's so many different game systems. It all changes.
Okay, what's a magician then?
Magician, well, it's what I am at kids' birthday parties. I turn up, do a few card tricks, like
real magic. Okay.
No, it's illusions. Thank you very much.
Illusions. Okay, perfect. There we go. How many different ways can you basically say you do magic? I'm a wizard. I'm a sorcerer. I'm a mage. I'm a warlock. Like you could just keep going, really, couldn't you? Yeah. Holy cow, it's endless. I think we can't not talk about the movie in great detail. We've mentioned it already, but I've just got to point some things out. So, Rotten Tomatoes gave the movie a 90% rating. That's fantastic for a movie that's an adaptation of a game, because usually they turn out to be pretty crap. I know we were saying this before we started recording, but I have to pretend that we haven't. Like,
you didn't have to say that more.
Yeah. I know. But it just always feels unnatural when we pretend and say the exact same thing again. But, usually game to movie or TV show adaptations are pretty garbage. Like the World of Warcraft movie, I haven't seen it, but I heard that was crap.
Mortal Kombat as well.
Yeah.
Finish him.
They finished themselves. Yeah, very true. Here's a bit of a surprise for you. Weird enough, Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves is regarded as underperforming at the box office, with only making $208 million profit versus $150 million budget as of July 2023. How do you feel about that?
Well, I feel it's got to pay back for all the other bad video game movies they've made over the years. They were really hoping for the slam dunk with this one. So to be on target, you've got to pay back for all those other ones, you know?
But then I'm just so surprised because I would have thought that you're tapping into like a big market here. Like, how many people love fantasy and science fiction and would go? Maybe they don't do they don't actually play Dungeons and Dragons, but they would love to go see this movie. You know, I thought you'd get them out in droves, but I'm just so surprised.
I think it could just be the fact that some people didn't watch it because they were afraid that it would be bad.
Crap, yeah.
And like, people have been let down. Just think of the major franchises. Like, people have been let down with Star Trek, with Picard, especially season 2.
Yeah.
Star Wars fans are angry. DC fans are angry. Like, Marvel fans are angry. Like, Lord of the Rings fans are angry. So it's like, all across like sci-fi and fantasy, fans are like, I've seen TV shows and films that have let me down. Like, is this going to let me down? I think when I watched it, I was like, no, this is a very, very good film. And I have watched it again, and I'll probably, because my siblings haven't watched it, I'm going to watch it with them again. It's like...
Good thing you weren't waiting for them to watch it.
Yeah, because like... when I was watching it, like, the things that were funny were actually funny. Like, when the main character jumps out the window with the person, you think that he's asking the guy to be at his hearing, so he could like hear his he could hear his story, so then he could then get out of the prison he was in. No, it was actually to jump out the window with him, and then he would fly, and then they would escape. And the fact that like Hugh Grant's character
does the same
thinks they're doing the same thing, and they've literally bricked it up.
I know. That was brilliant. The dialogue and just the comedic elements in that movie is so good.
Yeah. And like even his line, like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I don't know what came over me," was also hilarious as well.
Yeah. And like the barbarian character, I forgot what her name was. Played by Michelle. Helga, maybe? Yeah. The fact that like one of the best weapons she has in the entire movie is, you know, when they're about to get executed, she just pulls out a brick from the floor and just beats the crap of all these guys just with a brick. Like that's the best weapon in Dungeons and Dragons, a good old brick.
Or even just that scene when it's like, when he's trying to cut the ropes, he's like, well, what kind of stairs are these? Like we couldn't find any sharper stairs anywhere else.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, he took forever trying to do that.
Yeah. But you guys enjoyed it as non-D&D players, right? Like you said, you've played Baldur's Gate 3, you played Dungeons & Dragons with me, not in that universe, whatever. But like, you still really enjoyed that film, which I think is a testament to it, you know. But it's still got that real Dungeons & Dragons feel to it. It's still got that ragtag group of people who meet up again, like just like you wrote in the beginning. It feels like a D&D quest.
Well, as a D&D person yourself, like, do you feel like there are enough references in there for you to?
Oh yeah, owlbears.
Owlbears.
Like, I love owlbears. Like, owlbears.
Sorry, but that sounds like a very made up on the spot character. Like some guy was just sitting thinking, I need to make some magical creatures for it. He just looks out the window, he sees an owl. He looks at the wall, he sees a picture of a bear.
Oh, 100%. You got to remember when they were writing D&D, it was just Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson, right? Okay, it's just the two of them on their own, two nerds with a dream to make this game. And then they've made the basic rules and they're like, cool, we're going to make this thing called the Monster Manual. How cool is that? We're going to fill it up with loads of monsters. So you'll think of a few, like orcs, goblins. Yeah, we can use those. They're okay, cool. Like, oh, what if we had a Balrog? It's like, oh no, Tolkien's not going to be happy with that. All right, what do I make next? What do I make next? I don't know, dragon turtle. That's good.
Is that actually a thing?
Yeah, dragon turtles are a real thing. Yeah, and loads of things like owlbears and all these other things are the gelatinous ooze, the gelatinous cube, which is a big cube of jelly.
Yeah, that was good to see, actually. That was my favourite monster.
But like all these weird things, and it's just got to be two guys in a room being like, we got to fill up this book, right? We've got 200 pages to fill. Let's go, right?
I was quite fascinated by the different kinds of monsters, and I found that interesting because it felt refreshing. Like the owlbear, I thought was very cheap, to be honest, but I'll let that one slide.
But the owlbear's a D&D classic for that reason, because it's so stupid, right?
Yeah, and like,
but we love them.
Like even in Baldur's Gate, the 3, like early access, there was like an owlbear, and I think one of the things is that in the game, it's like, one, it's a lot bigger, and two, you see more. It's more of like an owl, so it has like huge feathers. But then if you think about,
it's less of a bear, more of an owl.
Yeah, but if you think about like, that's probably one of the worst combinations of animals if you think like a full-on bear with an owl that can see in the dark. Owls are technically seen to be quite intelligent. Like, of all the animals you want to cross with each other, one that's like both apex predators to then put into just one single animal.
Well, yeah, imagine the noises it'd make as well. Like, what's the noise owls make? They're like, ooh.
Go twit-twoo.
Yeah. I just keep thinking of South Park as well, the episode of Al Gore and Man Bear Pig. Like, half man, half bear, half pig. I just can't get it out of my head. A classic episode. And then what was the name of that? You know, when they're running through the maze and they're being pursued by those creatures that do illusions.
Yeah.
Those are really cool. Because again, you know, when I think of fantasy, there's so many typical things. Like, oh, there's minotaurs. Oh, there's orcs. Oh, you know, it gets a bit samey, doesn't it? But in this, they've actually got their own very original beasts.
Yeah, when you're making a D&D film as well, like D&D's been around since the 1980s, so you've got 40 years of history to pull from.
Yeah.
So they've just taken the best ones, and like they didn't even cover some of the really iconic ones. You guys ever heard of like a beholder?
Yeah, there's one in the early access of Baldur's Gate. Yeah,
which is like a classic D&D monster because it's one of the few that they've copyrighted. It's like, it's theirs. It's their fantasy monster. No one else can have one. You know, everyone else is floating eye demon head, you know. Like
before the Tolkien estate jumps in and tries to make it just in passive aggression, yeah.
You must have got the idea from the eye, yes, the Eye of Sauron.
Of course. So there was also something you said to me about dragons last night as well. Like, was it different colours mean different things with them?
Yeah, dragons color-coded for your convenience. Yeah, that's the old joke, because... So in D&D, you know, like you got all this lore, and they've been writing it for years and years and years and years and years. So it's called Dungeons and Dragons. So as you can imagine, you're gonna fight a lot of dragons, right? Like if you play D&D and you don't fight a dragon, you're not playing it right, are you? Come on. So when you come to that, you don't want to play against the same enemy all the time. Because let's say this is like my 10th D&D game, and I'm fighting a dragon who breathes fire. I'm like, oh, I killed this 5 years ago. Oh, I know the solution to this problem. I'll do this. So like, okay, we'll diversify. We'll create a range. So they made a range of good dragons and bad dragons. Now, this is really easy. If a dragon's scales are shiny, it's a good dragon. It's your friend. Really easy, right? Like, so, because, you know, also like you play this game when you're 10, 12. You need to keep it quite simple for that kind of reason. So those are like your bronze and silver and gold dragons. Then your evil dragons are the colours of the rainbow, like Power Rangers, kind of. You've got the red dragon, and then you've got the green dragon and the black dragon, the white dragon and the blue dragon, and they all have different breath weapons that can respect with them.
The black one was really cool, actually. It breathes acid, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's got an acid breath attack. Or a poison breath attack. It's one of the two. And then, you know, your red one breathes fire, and then your blue one spits lightning. So they're really, really cool, and there's loads of variety in D&D. What's great about D&D is there's not enough variety. Just make a new monster up.
Yeah, I mean...
It's fine, right?
They've made up the monsters themselves. They can just assign any rules to them. You can even just add your own, and
that's a key part of D&D. It's called homebrew, and it's what really keeps it alive. And they've now tried that, you know, like, and there's a huge community of D&D players who are like, I've made up this really cool monster. Just post it online. You're like, oh, that's a cool monster. I'll use that. You know, and that's what's great about D&D, and that's why I think it captures so many people, because the possibilities are endless, right? It is literally your imagination.
And that's the best bit. You create it yourself, as opposed to playing other games where, you know, there's a strict set of rules and stuff. You can't... Each experience is somewhat similar. You know, all that's different is someone might be playing better this time, but the structure is the same, unless you play Catan, because you can actually change the tiles around. But that is the amazing thing about these role-playing games.
Yeah, and that was the real innovation with D&D, was the innovation of having a dungeon master, right? Because before we were playing our tabletop games, we were playing with a board against each other.
Sit your ass down.
Exactly, yeah. So it would be really awkward to have one player sitting out and being the judge, right?
Yeah.
You know, like having a referee at a football game is essential, but no one wants to really be the referee. Like if we're playing football, us three, and I'm like, Morgan, could you just sit out and be the referee?
Yeah. Scorekeeper, timekeeper.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll sit down. I get it.
Yeah, so they kind of act like a referee and a judge for the game. And what's really interesting about D&D is that, so the game's really easy to break. To break wide open and make completely unbalanced and unfair, right? Okay,
right.
So you know when you're playing a role-playing game on your computer, you're playing like I don't know, because I had this playing Dragon Age Origins.
Yeah.
So I was playing Dragon Age Origins, loved it, had it on the hard setting, found it really challenging, nice difficulty level. Then I got to about level 14, and because I've been min-maxing so far, the game system broke wide open. None of the fights were challenging anymore, and I just kind of walked through the rest of the game. I was actually quite bored for the last 5 hours, which happens, which is...
Yeah. Especially if, like, you're playing as a mage, and you're able, especially in Dragon Age Origins, to get, like, the full elemental path that literally... You hit someone with an inferno, hit them with a snowstorm, hit them with an earthquake, and then hit them with a tempest. And it's like, how can they like deal with it? Because I think the one cool thing I really did like about Dragon Age is that, which I think you could probably do in like in Dungeons and Dragons, is that you could freeze someone and then hit them with like stones, and then they would just shatter.
Yeah, which is such a cool idea, right? It's brilliant, but but when you're playing a computer game, it's you against the computer. If the game system breaks and the game becomes too easy, that's a real problem.
Yeah.
That's a real
and that happens in, for example, strategy games like Civilizations or the Total War games. You get to a point where it's just too easy and you get bored.
Yeah.
Or it just gets way too hard and you just rage quit and just start a new campaign. I guess it's not the same as it breaking, but sometimes you can have faults in like these sort of AI and playing against computers and stuff like that.
Yeah, but here's the thing with the Dungeon Master there, if we're playing D&D together and you create this character that's just way too strong, you've studied the books and found all the loopholes, and you found this character, you can do 100 damage in a single round. Cool, I'll just make the fights harder. Like, not a problem.
Okay.
Like, it's all just numbers you can move around, right? Like, if my big bad boss had 100 hit points and you could do 100 damage in a round, it's like, cool, I'll just give him 1,000 then. And then it'll take you 10 rounds to kill him. Like, I'm the one in control of this game here.
Yeah.
Like, we're all playing together. It's not fun if it's too easy. So that was the real genius, is this checking and balancing system of Dungeons and Dragons. And that's what we've come to now.
Well, I felt like when you made the game we were playing, it felt fairly balanced, apart from the nipple tassels that were just so OP. Like, literally, I think I had those used on me a couple of times.
Yeah, that's because I hate to... I don't know if I should tell you this, Morgan, because this might reveal terrible Dungeon Master secrets. The game's completely rigged in your favour. Right? So you're playing Dungeons...
Dun, dun.
I know, right? So you guys, it's like your first role-playing game. Like, I'm not going to let you die. I'm going to let you feel like you could die really soon if you don't do something about it.
So you always win.
Like the tutorial in a video game, if it's so hard, people just like, I'm tired of this game. I'm going to go find something else.
Yeah, it's like the guy will roll to hit you and then do just enough damage to put you down to 1 HP. Did you never question that? How you always ended up on like 1 or 2 HP and you would just be scraping onto life, you know?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I got injured pretty badly because I was just doing silly stuff. Like, what was it? 5 sea... So basically, we're like pirates or something. There's out of the blue 5 violent seals flop onto our boat. And we have to fight them. I can't remember what I tried to do. I was like... we go around, everyone's trying to like fight them and say, I want to talk to them. I want to go up to them and say, why must we fight? Why must we be this? And I roll dice and I fail, and it's like a critical fail, and I think one of them chopped my arm off or something. Or like, they weren't even armed. They just like, with its like little flapper, just...
Yeah, it just like flapped your face up. It was like, boom, you know?
Yeah, that's what happens. They say words solve conflicts. Nah, mate.
No, to be fair, words do solve conflicts, right? And D&D, that's one of the amazing things. You can solve a problem any way you like. Like, this is, again, why I love the tabletop games so much, is that because I'm your dungeon master, whatever thing you can think of, I can make happen, and we can make that happen together. So when you're playing a video game, like, no matter how well they've planned for it, there's 1 or 2 ways to beat it, right?
Yeah.
There's 1 or 2 answers to the problem, rather than me giving you a problem, and you guys can think of whatever solution you want. And if it logically works, it works. It's all good, right? Okay, you don't have to do my pre-planned version. Like, if you decide, like, what is it? I gave these guys, like, a spike trap. They're like, I was like, okay, cool. So I have to, like, climb over it. They're like, no, we've solved the spike trap. So, like, a spike pit on the floor, ripped a door off its hinges, popped that on top, like, there you go, no spikes. It's like, yeah, you're absolutely right, guys. Well done. Yeah, no spikes. Good. Well done. You've thought of a solution.
Problem solving, isn't
it?
Go
for it, yeah.
And I guess some people like that, working as a team. It's kind of, I wish, in workplaces, it was something you could actually do. Because it'd work virtually as well. You could actually just set up a D&D game or like things like werewolves and stuff. People love working together and doing that group stuff.
Do you know what people really hate, though? Corporate team building sessions. I've run quite a few in my life.
Yeah, that's true. Oh, God, especially over lockdown, the quizzes. The endless quizzes.
Oh, there's nothing worse than turning up to a load of 50-year-old execs and you're like, right, guys, I'm going to teach you how to juggle today. And they look at you and they're like, oh, no. It's like, by passing the balls, we can learn to trust each other in our business dealings. Like...
Okay, so speaking of problems, here's a problem you must solve. There is a maiden fair stuck in a tower and you turn up valiant to rescue her. But there is a dragon and you have to fight this dragon. What weapon would you use?
To fight the dragon. Wait, one sec. What colour is this dragon? Because that's going to tell us a lot of key information, you know?
Pink.
Pink. Oh, my good. The crossbreed of the red and the white dragon. With the fire and gold weapon. Oh!
Gold fire? It must be amazing looking flames then. So what weapon would you use?
How intelligent is the dragon?
He's got an MA in business studies.
So not bad. Because I've got a degree in business studies. Doesn't mean anything, you know?
MA in Master of Arts in Business. Doesn't make sense. So yeah, fairly intelligent.
Deep in thought.
You won't even have to fight him. What's the spell that can cause you to teleport? So you can then teleport into the tower, carry the damsel, teleport out, and then not face the dragon whatsoever.
Misty Step.
That's clever.
Misty Step, yeah.
There you go. Well done.
Easy.
Right, Brendan, you have to say something else now. You can't.
I can't miss
Well done. Well done.
Thank you.
The key is not to fight.
I mean, if not fighting's an option, you know, I'd love like an invisible.
Oh yeah, I did say weapon, to be honest.
I mean, you did say weapon. You know?
Yeah.
You know, it's got to be a weapon. I mean, to kill a dragon, I don't know. Like, I want. Well, you know those massive crossbows you get to like defend cities. Like the huge
scorpions,
yeah, like one of those, like the ones you mount on a wall, and it takes like 3 men to draw it back. I want that against the dragon. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Load it with a nuclear weapon. Nice. I think what I'd do is I'd sing it a calming lullaby. You know, it gets calm and cozy. It comes up to me. It snuggles. I put my arm against it, and then out the blue, I put it out of its misery, just like that. Yeah. Nice. So moving swiftly on. So you're at a conference between the humans, the elves, and the dwarfs. It's time for them to come together and create peace. But something has happened to the elven king. Oh my God. The dwarves are fighting. The elves are fighting. They're going crazy. What do you do in this situation?
Very easy.
What'd you do?
Very easy. You put on the cha-cha slide. No one can resist the cha-cha slide, you know, like...
Take it back now, yo.
Yeah, exactly. Like, everyone... We've all been there at a wedding, and it just gets everyone together.
Yeah, true. Good move. What would you do?
Well, I would do the least like person in the room. Blame it all on them. And then like elves, dwarfs, he's to blame. Kill him.
Good move.
And then all of us get back together again to the love and lovely peace talks.
Good move. Good move. Honestly, well done. I think both are very equally valid things to do. I wish I bought some dice with me. Actually, that would have been great if we could roll off for it. Okay, very nice. Very nice. So, I think it's time to talk about some other stuff related to D&D. So, obviously, it came out in 1974? Was it? Yeah, 1974. Yeah. Now, a weird thing that happened at the time is it actually caused a bit of a moral panic in society. A lot of Christian people criticized the game for the alleged promotion of witchcraft, devil worship, suicide, murder, and nudity in a lot of the character art.
Okay, well, the nudity is because they were selling this to, teenage boys. And there's nothing better to sell to teenage boys than the chainmail bikini, right?
Jesus. Oh, my goodness.
Like, come on, they did it for I mean...
Well, I know why your dad was into it. Damn.
Wow.
And players were essentially ostracized. I can never pronounce
Ostriched.
Ostriched. Players were ostracized due to alleged Satanism in some cases. And, I've developed my own theory that this phobia that people have of nerds is sort of like this constant criticism of damn nerds or like, judging the nerds or geeks and stuff. I feel like there's perhaps an hangover there from this sort of moral panic that happened in the 70s and 80s over in Dungeons and Dragons. What do you think? Do you think that's plausible, or do you think that's just completely baloney?
I think you're right, and I think it's partly down to, well, basically, Dungeons and Dragons is set up in America, full of like ultra conservatives, and you still see that today. And some of the stuff that they come up with, you're like, seriously? And like
things like banning Harry Potter from schools because it was magic.
Yeah. Really?
Same kind of thing happens.
Oh my goodness.
And then you've got like their focus, like what was the major focus was like sports, and like masculinity was based on how good you were at sports.
Right.
And that's like, and the funny thing is that one of my friends was telling me like sports replaced warfare. That's why you've got like ultra fans. That's why you've got you've got like people go crazy when their team loses because
tribalism.
Because it's literally to your point. That's what warfare has turned into. Like before, when you'd have like group of young men who would go to war, would hear the stories about when their grandfather went to war, their fathers, and want to emulate them. Now the younger generation are like, no, I want to be a football player, basketball player, especially in America. Sports is the major thing. Mm-hmm. And just look at like when it comes to the Olympics, even this country's like, we love the Olympics, we love all the Olympic sports.
And the footy, don't forget the footy.
And then when the Olympics ends, it's like, all right then, take off take off the swimming, gymnastics off our TV. I want to go back to my soap operas.
And footy.
And footy, yeah. And I think that's the issue, is that before masculinity was based on how good you were at sports. Mm. And I think that was like the major issue that caused them, because some of them were actually good at sports, but then they just weren't focused on it, and they found something else that they actually enjoyed.
Yeah, and I always find this quite funny because I always attribute Dungeons & Dragons and board games to my interest in mathematics and like what
nerd.
Well, yeah, but like a lot of people that I knew growing up who played Dungeons & Dragons were very successful people, right? They spent their childhood, instead of kicking balls around, they were learning about maths, numbers, and statistics so they could kill the dragon easier. Turns out all of that translates really easily to the world of finance and business and making good trade deals and negotiations, because all the game theory translates.
Yeah.
So it's like, actually, do I want my kids sat there essentially studying quite a bit, or do I want them kicking the ball around? Like,
did you watch the game last night?
Oh, mate, mad one. Probably
the red team kicks straight into the back of the goal, man.
Oh.
Yeah, and that's it. I find it more interesting, because it stimulates your imagination. It's creativity. Sports are very good for exercise. It's good for achieving goals.
I'm not saying sports are bad by any stretch.
But you get different things
from
you get different things from, say, indulging in fantasy and like board game stuff, and then you get different things from indulging in sports.
But both in good measure. Neither's good, neither's bad. Yeah. But it's like, why would I prefer my kid to be playing football or Dungeons & Dragons? Like, it's like they're both just recreational activities.
Yeah, 100%.
That are beneficial.
Yeah.
What if you combine both? For example, you can actually play Quidditch in real life.
I mean, you can go and play Dungeons & Dragons in real life. You guys heard of LARPing?
Yeah.
Go LARPing, by the way. It's a wicked weekend.
For the benefit of our audience, what is LARPing?
LARPing is live action role playing. So instead of sitting down at a table and describing what your character does, you're like, nah. I want to get my foam sword. I want to put on my robes and my armor. I want to go to a field in the middle of Wales. I want to hit people for real, right?
The trick is bring a real sword with you. Oh crap! I just beheaded someone.
Yeah, but like on your point, I think like the reason why people like, why is like nerd stuff becoming popular. Like Game of Thrones is very popular. When Lord of the Rings came out, even people were like, oh, that's for nerds. That was very popular. Yeah. Like people who didn't care about, like growing up, I was a really big like Star Wars fan. And then people are like go into Star Wars. I used to like read comic books. And then when you see like people who didn't care about comic books at all, like, oh yes, the Thor film was amazing. Thor's amazing. I'm like, have you read any of the comics? Like, no. But the films are amazing. But I think they realize like how well written they are.
Yeah.
And like how much substance there is. And people are getting tired of like the same old stories they see on television. And they see that the substance written, like even for example, like when we talked about Dune or talked about Warhammer or talked about Game of Thrones, like Dungeons and Dragons have like good storytelling, and also it's a part of like escapism as well.
It's a real escapism thing. So the people you mentioned earlier who like playing Dungeons and Dragons, actors love Dungeons and Dragons. Why wouldn't you? I'm an actor. All I do is, let's face it, pretend to be someone else and play make-believe, but for a lot of money on a camera. Why would I not like playing a game that's all about telling stories and telling great stories with each other and like collaborating and talking and chatting and interacting?
It's less competitive as well. It's not really, cause it's more about cooperation, isn't it, Dungeons and Dragons?
It is now.
Depends on what character you are.
For like the original editions of Dungeons and Dragons were kind of not like that. That's something that came afterwards. First, it was basically the players against the Dungeon Master, because they were still in the 1970s board game kind of mindset. They were still in, we need that competitiveness. So if you read those old Dungeons & Dragons modules, you guys heard of the Tomb of Horrors?
I've heard of it. No.
Yeah, it's a really famous Dungeons & Dragons module. It's a really famous dungeon. And it's basically like a DM versus the players kind of thing. It's meant to be really, really hard. Right, so it's meant to be like a challenge for your players. It's for DMs who are sick of their players, want to really give them a challenge and kill off their player characters because they've been annoying. I mean, you're the Dungeon Master. If you want them to die, you just make a troll that's got infinite HP and they just all die. Like,
troll in the dungeon!
Which is why I find the whole concept ridiculous. I'm like, what is difficulty in D&D? Difficulty is whatever I set it as the Dungeon Master.
That's interesting, though, that you'd be playing against the Dungeon Master, because essentially it relies so much on a Dungeon Master to, let them win. And then they could easily just,
And a lot of people get into this mentality, and that's actually when you get a few problems in Dungeons and Dragons groups, And this is a couple of problems that you will experience if you run D&D and you play D&D for long enough. You always get a player who's upset because they feel like the Dungeon Master's being unfair to them or something like that, or being picked on, or they're not getting enough time to talk and role play, and it's...
Or they're talking too much. Like
Morgan, It's... But at least you run a podcast now, so you're rewarded for talking. You can find your calling.
Exactly. It's your fault. You and Jeffrey's fault for putting me on air. The world is quakes at my feet. But yeah, and I love it how, just quick thing in a movie, that's a thing they pick up on, that people talking too much about their character backstory. Like at the start, when I can't even remember his name. I always just say Chris Pine because he's just hot, and that's how you.
I don't remember what his character. He just is Chris Pine, isn't he?
Yeah, he's
playing Chris Pine very well.
But he's giving his backstory, and then the judges on the panel are like, "Come on, move on." And he said that's a good little reference to that.
Yeah, because we've all been there. We've all been there. The guy who loves creating characters. Like, this is how they enjoy the game. Like, so let them talk about the character for a little bit, but it's like, it's been 15 minutes, man. Like, I know that your character has 7 sisters and we need to know about all of them because it's important for the next section of backstory. But let's get on and play a game.
So, speaking of backstory, so we've sort of talked about, what Dungeons and Dragons has influenced, and we think pretty much everything. But what influenced Dungeons and Dragons? This is a controversial moment we've been waiting for, folks. So to our viewers out there, if you don't want to hear controversy and hear the moment we got sued and we had to shut down the podcast, then...
Warner Brothers came for us.
Here comes big old Watsy with the coast. Yeah.
I knew it was going to happen one day. It's just a matter of when. So, from what I read, from my understanding, influences of... Oh, they're going to hate this. J.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit are controversial. It's quite easy to assume, as there's orcs, elves, dwarfs, balrogs, ents, and even hobbits, as we've said in Dungeons & Dragons, at least originally. However, there was a threat of copyright action from Tolkien Enterprises in the 80s, roughly, that forced name changes. So, for example, hobbits became halflings, ents become Treant.
Treants.
Treant.
Tree folk. Yeah, treants, tree folk. Just, yeah.
And then Gary Gygax himself actually, publicly has played down the influence of Tolkien, so they'll never publicly admit.
Of course, yeah.
You can't publicly admit that.
Yeah.
Especially like, Tolkien, the estate being very protective of that IP. So, for example, Rings of Power, which was the holiest level of crap. I mean, it was okay, actually. I'm being a bit mean now.
Yeah, well, that's do you know what? I sat through that, and the entire time I'm like, this is fine.
But
this
just
is
fine.
Yeah.
6
out of 10, fine. Not excellent, not groundbreaking, but fine television.
I can watch it and do my taxes at the same time.
Exactly. Kind of background stuff, which is in its way it's an insult. And Tolkien estate's quite protective, as we said. So like the whole reason why Rings of Power was possibly the reason why it was so average as is, despite $700 million being spent on it, holy cow, was because Tolkien estate wouldn't hand over the rights to mention certain parts of the Silmarillion and the Lord of the Rings universe.
And even to your point, Morgan, they said Peter Jackson, stay away. The person, Sir Ian McKellen, stay away. Current cast, stay away. Yeah. They said that the universe set up by Warner Brothers, which was like New Line Cinema, which Warner Brothers now bought, is separate from the Amazon universe, because they then were like
the Amazon universe.
Because you now see it, you see all the writing now with Warner Brothers saying we're making more Lord of the Rings films. Then you're like, aha, that's why they didn't give them any of the rights to the Silmarillions or the Children of Hurin or any other books, because they were like, we've got to deal with Warner Brothers coming through, so we'll give you these small snippets and we'll keep the films for ourselves.
That's actually what Warhammer used to do. It used to give out small parts of the license. So, I mean, I don't know, when you did the Warhammer episode, did you talk about the whole way that they changed their strategy with games?
No, but I did talk about, actually, I don't know how related this is to what you're saying, but originally Citadel Miniatures, which is a subsidiary of Games Workshop that, is Warhammer's maker, used to make D&D figurines in 1984 to 1986.
Yeah.
Is that what you're going to say, or are you going to say something?
I mean, don't tell them. They still make D&D figurines, right? Okay, there's
really?
Nothing.
Wow.
Well, because D&D, way it was intended to be played first was with pen and paper. It was theatre of the mind, is what they call it now. But the whole idea was that all you need to play, pen, paper, some dice, screen, and the rule books. So you just imagine the whole thing, and the DM guides you through everything. You just roll dice. And people are like, that's great, but it can get a bit confusing in combat when every 2 minutes got outside dungeon. But like, wait, where am I again? And he's like, you're next to the big rock, which is in front of Goblin 1, but Goblin 2 is hanging on the ceiling. You're like, okay, so can I hit him with my bow? He's like, no, of course you can't, because there's this banner in the way. So like, okay, what if we just turn this into more of a board game, get a battle map, just squares, and then we can draw some stuff on, and we'll have miniatures. And this doesn't stop you buying Games Workshop miniatures and using them for your games. Right? If I need 10 goblins, they sell a box of 10 goblins.
I swear you did. You did in the one we did.
I used my old Warhammer figures for it.
I can't remember which ones you had, though.
I had the Skaven, so we all fought the Rat
Men.
So, we were fighting Rat Men in a sewer. So it's like, cool, well, I'll just get my Rat Men models. No one stops you. Again, there's no D&D police. Games Workshop aren't looking over your shoulder being like, are you using these to play Warhammer only?
Turn the air conditioner a bit on it.
Just quickly, there was a question I wanted to ask, because I know when I was the build-up for Baldur's Gate 3, there was a whole issue with Hasbro, who now have the license. And they kind of said something like people who were streaming Dungeons & Dragons on YouTube, there was an issue with you can't use it. And I was going to ask you, since Hasbro has taken over D&D, has there been an issue that fans have seen with it?
So Hasbro took over Wizards of the Coast quite a few years ago, who own quite a few things. They own Magic the Gathering, if you've ever heard of that.
Yeah.
Which was a big part of my life for many years, because I'm the king of nerds. Sorry, I don't want to take your title here, but no, you got and they own Dungeons and Dragons, and they had this thing called the Open Game License, and the idea of this was that D&D was growing, and they wanted it to grow more quickly. Because the problem with Dungeons and Dragons is that after I sell you the core rule books, like the Player's Handbook, the Monster Manual, and the Dungeon Master's Guide, and maybe some dice, you're kind of set for the next 5-10 years. I can release a new edition, try and get you to buy that, but there's nothing stopping me from playing my old books. So I still play D&D 3.5. I still love that game system, so I still play that. I still have the same books that I've had for years and years and years. So it's like, how do we make more money? It's like, well, we'll make more supplement books, and then people will buy supplement books. So they release extra classes in a rule book, more monsters, so like Monster Manual 2, Monster Manual 3. Oh, this is like a pre-made adventure for you to play, so that you don't have to spend so much time writing your adventure. Just play this one. We've made it for you for the busy individual. Like, there you go. And yet there's open game license, which basically allow people to make open source content. So when I was saying earlier about, I've made a really cool... This is like a moss troll that lives in moss. It's like a really cool, like, stealth monster that when your party's walking through the swamp, it can come out the swamp. Like, really cool monster.
What,
I've put
an
it on
ogre?
internet.
It's basically Shrek, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, but
This is my swamp. Sorry, I just had to quote Shrek.
Yeah, it's good.
Continue.
But yeah, so you can go and use that monster. Cool, great. This will make more buzz. People will get more excited because what's really going to get us more money is people buying more books. People who buy more books makes us more money, and that keeps our writers employed, that keeps the people who keep the game employed, and that keeps us making money from D&D. Fantastic. Cool. So they're really trying to get like the tip of this, it's called the hobby trumpet or the hobby funnel. So the idea is it makes a triangle shape, and all the money's really at the top. It's these new people. They're the ones who are going to buy the starter package, and we need to get them. And they had this open game license, and there was like...
Sorry, I was just trying to subtly tell you, stop slapping your arms on the table.
Oh my goodness, I'm a big gesturer, you know, like...
I know.
It's all the juggling, it's really done me in. Like...
I hate to hold you back, it's just because the water bottle's holding up the microphone. You
Professional setup over here, you know.
No, we only choose the best studios, as you can see.
Exactly. So they're like, how do we expand this further? It's like, oh, well, you can do what you like with the game. Like, once you bought the books, you can run your own game. And then people are like, okay, cool, I'll just stream D&D with my friends. That'll be a fun thing to do. And then that becomes a full business, right? So you've got like Critical Role and Dimension 20 and Arcane Arcade and like all these D&D streaming channels that are making quite a bit of money, right? Like not millions and millions and millions and billions, the same as D&D, but like, they're still making money. And they're like, and Hasbro have turned around as a company. Their goal is to maximize profits, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the aim. They're there to serve their shareholders, which is their right as a company. They make this game, and they're like, well, you're making loads of money off of our product. Could we have a bit of that, please?
I see.
Right. So it's like, but the way they did it, as a company could do it, wasn't the worst way. I don't think. Like they gave people fair notice, fair warning. They're not saying like, hey, you can't do this. When they're not banning anyone from using their game, they're like, hey, if you want to use our official licensed products to make money and revenue, which we didn't see happening, we saw D&D as a game played between friends and we were in the business of selling books. We didn't know that you could sell this as a show of, I don't know, how many episodes is Critical Role on now? Like they've done like 300, 400, 500? Huge D&D streaming thing where they play like a 3-hour session and people watch it. So many episodes. Like, well, we never thought people were going to do it like that. Maybe we could like license it so that you could give us a bit of money because you're using our stuff to make money, and we'd like some of that. Is basically the change that's happened, which then kicks up the stuff because this rule doesn't affect majority of the community, right?
Yeah.
Like 99.9%. I think it's if you're earning over 250,000. Don't quote me on that. Actually,
what? So say if you host not tournaments, but you host D&D things, or you're a big business that sells all the merchandise, you would be the one who gets spun of it, but not if you're just playing at home with mates.
Yeah, if you're playing at home with mates, it doesn't affect you. If you're just playing D&D, it doesn't affect you. It's affecting the people who are making like subsidiary projects and basically piggybacking off of D&D success without paying D&D that much. So they're
okay, yeah.
So you got that controversy, but like the solution's really simple. So we used to have this happened before. There was a company that used to make those supplement books I was talking about for third edition D&D. They used to make adventures, and then D&D turned around and were like, guys, I know that this is great and you're helping us sell more core rule books, but we kind of want you to stop doing that, like making supplements for our game, because we want to control what our thing is. We want to control our image. We want to control our product. Fair enough. So went cool. They went and get the game Pathfinder, which is legally distinct from Dungeons & Dragons 3rd edition, right? Okay, it's pretty much the same game.
Yeah, because I play it and my brother play it, and like...
Yeah, that's Dungeons & Dragons, basically.
Yeah, because like, I was just thinking like, why doesn't it have the logo on it at all? Like, and I understand why now, yeah.
Capitalism, that's why, bro.
Yeah, it's just like, so we'll make our own game system that's totally not Dungeons and Dragons. It is Dungeons and Dragons, right? Okay, and then our books will work for Pathfinder. They'll also work for D&D if you just change a few things around, and again, you just back end it in. It'll be fine.
It's interesting because that sounds, the way you talk about their business model, that because people would just buy it and then just play it for years and not buy any more stuff. So how does that business keep going if they can't keep finding new people to play? How do they make money off people? And companies like Games Workshop, that explains a lot about how they just keep releasing new rules, new additions, and stuff, because you've got to keep feeding petrol into the motor to keep it running.
Games Workshop are they're a model company.
Yeah,
they sell models. That's their goal. Their goal is not to make the best game of Warhammer they can. Their goal is to sell models.
Yeah.
And do you know who you sell the most models to? It's not going to be the person who's been playing for 20 years who might buy like a couple of Space Marines there, a couple of Orcs there. It's the new player who wants to play the game and buys 70 models at the see time.
Yeah, those starter packs and stuff.
Yeah, that's selling a lot of models. That's selling a lot. It's because once you've already got your collection, you've already got your collection.
Although I will say, though, there's a thing called Pile of Shame where you just keep buying new models. Like, you buy a squad of 10 men, you paint 2, you glue, like, 1 more together, and then you're like, something new just came out, I'll just buy that. And then you paint a little bit of that, and then, a new model came out, I'll buy that. And then your Pile of Shame just grows higher and higher.
Yeah, but you're already hooked. They don't have to care about you anymore.
Yeah, but
you're already in the business.
They do make good money out of people who are already in it as well. But yeah, you're right. There's the new starters, because the startup costs are quite astronomical, because you need to buy the brushes, the paints, everything. And I guess same with D&D, because you need to buy the dice, you need to buy the board.
It's the startup cost is, it's about £100, I'd say. That's what it used to be. It was £30 per rule book. So you needed 3, plus some dice. You could get a set of dice for maybe £5, cheap ones. But they're like nerd bling, so like you can get way better dice, like get metal ones with like diamond inlays. You could do whatever you like, right? But yeah, it was about £100 to start. But about £100, if you're playing 4 hours a week for the next 5 years of your life,
it's an investment.
It's not that bad.
It's really not that bad. It's really not that bad.
Yeah, like to both of your points, like both of them have really gone hard into like video games, like so. And another thing I also found weird is finding out. I watched like a podcast by, I think, Ed Greenwood, the one who made the world, which is Faerun, which the film's based in, which Baldur's Gate's based in, which the Neverwinter game is based in.
Right.
And I think the main thing is like they're now focusing on like games, and like they think that Baldur's Gate could be the best RPG of this decade.
I mean, Baldur's Gate, the original ones, are still amazing games. Like, I went back and played Baldur's Gate 2, and it just holds up. But it is old school RPG.
Yeah,
it's harsh.
It is.
Like, if you died, you lose all your items. Like, I remember that in
you
some
start
old
at level
RPGs.
1, you go into a fight, and they're like, cool, right, do you want to do the tutorial? You're like, nah, I'll be fine. You just die immediately. You're like, oh, maybe I do need to read a bit.
Yeah, and I think, like, my brother was even just saying, like, in, like, some of the early Metal Gear Solid games, or even some of, like, the earlier games in the 2000s, it was, like, completely unforgiving. Like, you skip out on the tutorial, the character's dead in the first few minutes of the game.
Yeah, that's true. I also like, with RPGs as well. I remember one I used to play called, I think, Hellbreath, or like Price and Tell. If you die, you actually drop some of the items you had on you. So you'll respawn somewhere, but you've lost some of your money. You've lost some of like your valuable like level 17 2-stam plus 7 strength sword. And it really is quite punishing. And in some ways, I kind of miss that, because RPGs I've played recently, although I will say I've not really been playing many recently. It's too easy. You die, you just have to do the quest again or something. Yeah.
And I think that's why Elden Ring was so loved by so many people around the world, because it kind of felt like
it's punishing, is it?
Like, and also like Dark Souls as well is because people are like, no, I don't want to be in like an RPG game where, to your point, I can just save my way through it and then still end up winning, or potentially to the stage of like, oh, the character dies, you keep all your loot anyway.
Yeah.
And like, if I hit enough buttons anyway, I can still defeat this person sooner or later.
Yeah, or like they've held your hand through so much of it. You see some of the tutorial links now, and they're 4, 5, 6 hours. And you're 10 hours into the game, and a little box pops up. You're like, well, I thought I was done. I thought I learnt it by now.
Yeah.
But they're still in that hand-holding process. And that's a part of game design that's really improved. Like, D&D's evolved a lot as well. All these RPGs have, all these games have. They've all become a lot more forgiving. Because, again, it's getting new players in.
Whilst we're on that note, what is your favorite RPG game, and what is your favorite MMO RPG game?
Mine is really tough because like for me it was like periods of time. So like my first proper RPG game that I loved was Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, because that was the first RPG game I actually ever played.
The twist.
Did you finish it?
Yeah, I finished it.
That's
finding out
sign,
spoilers here, and if you haven't played it, seriously, this game's over 20 years old. Like the fact that you're Revan and that you're the actual evil character that everyone's been talking about was a major twist for me. And like, so then that got me into, and I actually played that game pretty late. So then I played the second game, which I also enjoyed, and then I found out that they've got like Dragon Age Origins coming out, so BioWare, played that game. I really liked it, but then like Mass Effect just blew like my mind away when it came to RPGs.
Oh, Mass Effect 2 was
I felt very refined. Like
it did.
Mass Effect 2 was definitely its peak, and I thought Mass Effect 3, even though some thought it was disappointing, I thought for me it was satisfactory, and I liked the whole idea. You find out the Reapers, the reason why because that was the whole mystery. Like, who the hell are these giant space robot things that are wiping out life? And finding out that mystery, why is because of the classic in science fiction. There's always this fight between synthetic life and organic life, and that's why the Reapers come to basically tilt the balance away from organic life, basically to restore things and let the galaxy recover and stuff. And I loved it. And then Mass Effect Andromeda was just absolutely garbage.
But one of the reasons I love Mass Effect is that it's got a very D&D feel. It's a ragtag group of adventurers. Like, think about Mass Effect. You've got your little squad of guys, and then you go back to the tavern on your home base, and then you go out for a mission where you've got to, I don't know, kill this, fetch that, do that, and then you come back and you chat together.
And you bang all the aliens. You bang all the aliens as well.
Don't pretend you didn't do a romance. Come on.
Yeah. That's about Dragon Age as well. Excuse me. Hello.
And like, I think the one that I have to say, like, all of them, I love them, but I have to say, like, The Witcher 3.
Yeah, The Witcher 3 is an amazing RPG, yeah.
When you go through, like, I think it's Whiterun or Whitefield, like, the first part of the game, the tutorial part, is like, I first thought that, this is what the whole game's going to be. Then when you get to see the rest of the game, it's like, wow, this is huge.
Yeah, so many different settings and the graphics.
I think, like, some of the things I really loved about the game is that no matter what level you are, if you didn't do it the right way, you would still end up losing. Actually, I was playing like The Witcher. It happened in The Witcher 2 for me, and some of my friends, it was in Witcher 3. When you're fighting like a spectre, the fact that you have to do a specific sign on the floor for them to go into that area, for you to attack them. So literally, I would be fighting a spectre. I'd completely missed the tutorial to tell me what to do. Kept on fighting, and then Geralt kept on dying. I was like, this game's bugged. Like why does he keep dying? To then check online, actually, no, there's an actual art sign that I need to put on the ground for him to then actually kill spectres and ghosts within that area.
I mean, at least you can do that. Imagine playing back in the 90s when there was no internet and you just you got to that bit, you're like, it's unbeatable. Yeah. The game's done, I guess.
Rage quit could have been like, you know what, forget that game. I'll move on to something more easier.
Should have done the tutorial.
I've been playing like loads of PS2 games because I found one in my girlfriend's. It was my girlfriend's brother's old PS2. And I've got all these old French PS2 games.
The Swiss PlayStation.
The Swiss PlayStation, right? And I don't even never play an RPG in French when you can't speak French. Like, it's not a good idea. Trying to read the computer, but jouer on? I got that.
I love you playing on a
Swiss
Swiss PlayStation. Something about that's so amusing.
Yeah. But just playing like the old Tomb Raider games, like Tomb Raider 6, Angel of Darkness, one of my favourite games growing up, like the atmosphere. But yeah, just sat there being like, I just can't figure out this level. And like the video game logic would just be like, I looked at a guy, they're like, they just forgot to put this bit in, so you got to do a workaround. I'm like, oh, is that how games used to be?
And it's ridiculous, the fact that there were no patches. If a game was broken, it was broken.
That was it. Yeah.
Speaking of The Witcher 3, this is how much, like, I mean, such a good game. Obviously, it won Game of the Year. I think it's CD Projekt Red.
Yeah, they make it.
Literally yesterday, they released yet another update for it. Like
it's still being updated.
Yeah, still being update 4.04. Like, and they're still going.
And they brought it onto like current consoles and like gave it a huge update. And I think like I think they sold like last year like still 100,000 copies.
Just for like perspective, Witcher 3 came out on 18th of May 2015. Like,
damn.
That is, you know, that is a company that's put a lot of effort into a game and they're still going with it. Like, amazing. Now, you guys still haven't answered, like, you said RPG. What about MMO RPG? You've been speaking about...
I sank a lot of hours into World of Warcraft. So I sank a lot of time. So if I had to pick it, it'd have to be that one because it was just... It was a classic, really good game. Really good game. I mean, apart from the amount of... I hated it. And hated every second of it. Yet loved it at the same time. It was just... what was the moment that made you quit World of Warcraft?
I think for me was just like... My friends left... And then that's what kind of like got me into like RPGs because like my friends left World of Warcraft and I was like, but I want this kind of like RPG fantasy element. And then that's when I was like looking, funny enough, on Wikipedia, looking for like, okay, RPG games. And then I just kept on seeing, and I even spoke to my friends. They were like, Knights of the Old Republic is the game to play. And then I kind of didn't go back to MMOs since then because it was like, if there's like a offline like video game I can play that's good enough, then why would I then go back online?
I don't need no friends now.
Well, if you're playing World of Warcraft without friends, it's not the same experience, is it?
It's not. No.
Yeah, there's a big part of it. I think that's kind of why I like playing single-player games now, because I just can't be asked to wait for someone to come online. And, like, I'm an early riser, so, like, playing online video games with friends and, like, I message at, like, 7:30, like, hey, do you want to play some games? Like, oh, yeah, I'm just making food. Yeah, I'll be, like, 20 minutes. Then they finally message me at, like, half 9. So, are you ready to play? And I'm like... I've got to be up at like 5 a.m.
And it's like, especially like now, like before, you could have like a full-on all-nighter with your mates, like just playing constantly. But now it's like with jobs and responsibilities, it's like you can't just unless you're like on like annual leave on holiday, you can't put like a full-on all-nighter.
God, yeah, man.
If I get like an hour a day to play video games, I consider that a good game.
Yeah.
I'm a grown man. The only way I could complete Dragon Age Origins was because I had COVID. And I was locked in my room for 2 weeks.
That was it. Apart from the COVID, that must have been great.
I mean, it was brilliant. I mean, but that was the last time I got to actually like complete a game. You know?
Okay.
I remember once I was playing this online free-to-play MMORPG called Priced Intel that me and my brother loved. Once I was playing it for so long, I really needed a toilet. I left it too late. I left the computer, legged it to toilet, but by the time I just got into the bathroom, I pissed myself.
No. Mate, this is why you need the emergency bottle. Everyone knows this, you know. Like, when you're in that deep rage, you're 3 hours in, you know.
Mate, I'm not a savage. Like, come on, I'm not pissing in the bottle. Like, oh, mate.
World of Warcraft was like work. I remember grinding for like gear and items to do the raid each week because you need the fire resist, so you need like disposable potions. Because so much of that game was just wasting your time. It was just wasting
but losing yourself in it, really, isn't it? Like crafting, looking at some of like the lore, reading up on some of like
and then killing 500 boars for the 1% job rate. Because I think I left when I started. When I was virtual fishing for like a scale for a bag. I think I spent like 4 hours at this fishing pond for scale, and it was that moment I was like, "What am I doing? What is this? I got to stop." Because like I'd done all the cool content. I was on to just raiding.
Yeah. I guess just raiding gets to a point as well. It's kind of like in GTA when you get to a point in the story where you stop playing the story and just go around like stealing cars and just beating people and like seeing.
I've never played the story of GTA. I didn't even know there was a story.
There always is. It's just
there always is. Yeah,
it's just a point you get to where you just enjoy doing stuff that you can't do in real life, which is going around beating people up and then getting 6 stars and getting the army on you. Like,
I mean, I thought that was the game. You go and drive people over until the police chase after you, and then you try and escape. I thought that was GTA. No, like
yeah. Well,
funny enough, that's like how like it started off. And funny enough, I think, it was first made, like, the first 2 games were by UK game studios. And there's actually a GTA London. So
Rockstar.
Yeah, Rockstar made one, And that's why people were like, after GTA 4, they were like, oh, we're going to a new location. People were like, oh, are you coming back to London? It's like, no, we're going to go back to LA, to the San Andreas area to do GTA 5.
Yeah, it was a classic one, isn't it? I'd love them to do GTA London because I just walk around Tottenham and like, that's where I live. And just like, it does feel a lot like GTA around there. Holy cow.
Talk about games in London. Have you played, what is it, Call of Duty Modern Warfare? Like the new Call of Duty.
Yeah.
With the Piccadilly one, but they don't have the circles for the tube signs. They've only got the rectangles, so there's no copyright for it.
Because
it's like such a tiny... Because it's like... accurate representation of Piccadilly Circus, apart from that one sign.
Yes,
Really, that was your limit. You're like,
You couldn't pay TFL. No.
Yeah, TFL probably need the money.
Come on, they're hungry for cash.
You could get them on a discount or something. Okay. Any final notes? Any final things you want to say about D&D?
I mean, we've only just scratched the surface, really.
Yeah, this is it. The same with Warhammer. We could only really scratch the surface. Like, it would be good to do more in-depth specials in the future. I'd be very keen to have you back on for that at some point. Is there anything?
Just one question for me is that so Baldur's Gate, Neverwinter, the films are based in this new world.
It's based in the Forgotten Realms.
The Forgotten Realms. So that's the D&D that I know. So then what is the actual core worlds that were invented in the 1974?
There are many, many different D&D worlds, right? So like, Forgotten Realms is like the main one that a lot of the stuff's set in, you know, and that's where the whole plane system comes from and all the gods come from there. But it's not the only world. Like, there's so many others, but that's just the core one that they set a lot of campaigns in because it brings a lot of consistency for new players. They could be like, hey, if you want to play D&D, play this. Like, this is the D&D experience, you know?
Okay.
But then if you don't want that, you can go play Ghost of Saltmarsh, which is all about being, you've got a ship and you're going around Cursed Waters. Play Curse of Strahd, which is like an amazing setting, which is kind of feels like Sylvania from Warhammer Fantasy. It's like a dark, depressing, gothic horror. There's an evil vampire who rules over it, who kind of taunts the party as you go along this quest. So Forgotten Realms is just one setting.
Okay.
It's just one, but it is their core one. But yeah, amazing setting. That's where Baldur's Gate is.
Yeah.
Like do you ever play the Baldur's Gate PS2 game?
Yeah.
Yeah, good game.
Very bad. But the Swiss one's better though.
Oh, the Swiss one's much better, you know. Like,
the cheese, the raclette you can get in games, amazing.
Oh, yeah.
That's
it's
why,
good. Actually, it feels like Diablo. It feels very different from the other Baldur's Gate games.
That's why I love just a random note, but in The Witcher, the things you could eat, like you could eat stew, you could eat potatoes. Then like in the Dungeons and Dragons on Among Thieves movie, just the way they're talking about potatoes, like he'll go like, she's in prison, she's like eating potatoes. Some guy comes up to her, try and start with her, and he's like, I wouldn't do that if I were you. She really loves
her
it.
potato. Yeah.
And she like uses a weapon at some point as well.
No, that is good actually, because so what is it? So in D&D, they've got whole systems in place that no one uses for tracking things like rations, like how much food you have for your journey and whether you're carrying a tent or all this stuff. So they put it in the game in case you're a really hardcore role player and you want to be like, right, so you make camp. How do you arrange your tents, guys? Let's talk about this for the next 5 minutes.
Oh my God.
Like in case you're that kind of role player, like,
Okay.
what you cook for dinner. But like, I love it because their food list was so short. They're like, hey, you get trail rations, iron rations, which are like your bare bones, fancy rations, bread, meat, cheese. Yeah, that'll do. Yeah, we'll have that as the food section, and that's that, you know. So a potato is actually potato's quite a new thing to have in D&D. You know, it wasn't in the core rulebook. You had to homebrew your own potato.
Oh
into the
God!
game.
Wow.
Okay.
I wouldn't have started D&D for that rulebook then. It's got to have potatoes, and how can you not have chips? Potatoes, boil them, fry them, stick them in the stew. So I had to quote that from Lord of the Rings. Well, looks like that's all we've got time for, folks. I know obviously there's so much more we could talk about, but as you know, I'm an early riser and everything revolves around me in my world. So, yeah. Any last things you'd like to say, Brendan?
If you haven't played D&D, play D&D. It's fantastic. Be a dungeon master, be a player, go play a game. There's so many places that you can play D&D now. If you can't find a group, there are loads of ways to find group. If you're going for Reddit, looking for group, you can find your own D&D group. That's a really good way to start. Or there's a bar in South London, which has a name.
Oh, the Bad Moon Cafe?
Something like that, yeah. But they have regular drop-in D&D sessions. So really do go and try it, because you never know. You might like it. We all like daydreaming, right? Daydream with your friends.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You know, you haven't plugged yourself properly yet, though.
Oh, I should plug myself, shouldn't I?
Yeah, go on, plug yourself.
Yes.
Plug your ass.
Sorry, so my name is Brendan Rogers. I am the professional fool. I am a variety performer, entertainer. That's like the official gist. Basically, I turn up to places, act like an idiot, but I'm quite funny while I do it. So I go to events up and down the country, be that family fetes or private functions or weddings, and entertain you, be that with juggling, balloon animals. I'm currently doing an act with Jack in the Box, which are life-size elephant puppets, which are amazing. I'd say you need them at every birthday party, you know? But if you want to contact me, you can get my Instagram. I'm the Professional Fool, and I'm happy to turn up to your event.
I can officially say I know Brendan very well, and he is 100% a fool. I will totally. I was waiting
certified,
so long. Literally, when we started as well, I was hoping you'd say that so I could drop that joke then, but you just made me wait an hour and a half, bro. I can't believe you've done this to me. Last time we have you on the show, amen.
I know. It turns out after my business degree, being a clown, I'm not that good at plugging myself or marketing or any of that. So I find the whole thing a bit like yeah, I do that, but like let's talk about D&D, guys. Yeah.
Yeah, I could struggle with that sometimes. Like people ask, like, tell us like at work, like tell us an interesting fact about yourself. I never mention a podcast. I just because I feel like if I turn around and say, oh, I co-host a podcast, it's like, look at me. I always feel a bit like a show off.
That's actually a really loaded question. That's actually a really top tip. Never do that as an icebreaker.
Yeah.
Never say tell an interesting fact about yourself because it puts so much pressure on you. Whenever it happens, you always freeze. Never do that as an icebreaker. It's so like I see that mistake all the time. Like being a performer clown and teaching juggling and team building workshops, I see this happen. No one likes it. You don't like it.
Yeah.
So just pick something else.
And it gets competitive as well. Some people might
show
off.
Does.
Yeah.
And it's also quite personal to you. And if you don't know the other people in the room, it's quite a nerve-wracking thing. If I turn around and I'm like, oh yeah, I like I don't know, skinning dead dogs.
Or taxidermist.
Yeah. It's like some people might have a problem with that, so I would feel a bit shy. So always make it something really harmless, like I don't know, just like
how do you like?
I play guitar on the weekends.
Yeah, but like just not even ask that question in the first place. Just turn around and be like, hey, just look to the person left to you, give them a high five. And then just do high five.
Well, the person next to you doesn't have hands. That's not very
That's
inclusive.
true. Well, if that situation comes up.
Bloody hell, man.
I'm sorry, yeah.
Well, thank you, folks. We're going to leave it there. It has been a fantastic one. I've got to admit, I'm slowly getting to D&D. Before we did all this, I wasn't into Star Trek. I wasn't into D&D. Wasn't into... just those things.
So we'll play again in winter, and I'll take the tutorial gloves off.
Give me the real stuff, man. I want to die in D&D. Like none of this.
Oh, it's good to kill a player. It feels
stuff.
very satisfying when someone makes a stupid mistake, and you're like, "You sure want to do that?" Like, yeah, I really want to do that. You're like, sorry, you're dead, mate. I did warn you. Like,
yeah, boy. And if you love our podcast, then please give us a like. Click the notification button as well if you want to find out when we release our next episode, because we've got lots coming up. We're going to do Mass Effect. We're going to do a Lord of the Rings one, because we've actually done Rings of Power, to be honest. That's got to happen.
A deep dive into the science of juggling, yeah?
Yeah, we can do juggling.
We can do juggling, yes.
Literally, it'll just be 1 hour and a half of you just standing there juggling.
What really works great in the podcast format as well.
Yeah. It's ASMR, I guess, at that point, really, isn't it? Yeah. Oh, but what else did we have planned? I had a whole list from one of
We did have like Secret Invasion Part 2 that we need to do the last 3 episodes. I think also we want to maybe go back to like Star Trek to just look into like the universe, because we did talk about like how its history, how it's come through, how it's like one of the first
Trekkies and stuff. Yeah,
and like it's one of the first meta universes. Like everyone keeps banging on about, oh, look at the Star Wars universe, look at the Marvel universe, the DC cinematic universe, but you literally had Star Trek who came before and got like no love for doing it.
Yeah, now where's the credit? Yeah, it's just not fair. And that thing about time travel, different realities, definitely Star Trek beat them to it for sure. What else do I need to plug? I got distracted by Star Trek. And, if you really love us, then please donate to our Patreon, which you can find in the link below. And I assume you're watching this on YouTube, otherwise that might seem a bit weird. We're also on Spotify as well, so feel free to check us out on there and give us a follow and a like. And check out the Pick Up the Mic network. That's the network we're a part of, where you can watch other videos such as our gaming segment, where recently we were talking about the Total War Game series, as well as just the gaming industry in general, as well as stuff to do with professional development run by our great overlord, Lord Jeffrey. Jeffrey, we love you, and please stay in my life forever. That's all, folks. Thank you, and have a lovely evening. Bye-bye.
See you, folks.